Hey Mom, it's Kristen Tschida, and I just have the Mom Minute for you today. And I jotted a few things down, so I'm going to be glancing down at my notebook. And I actually was like totally crying when I was just kind of reading through, and I thought, oh, I just felt this burden to bring it to you today. So I was reading through Genesis 1, 2, and 3. I love to just spend some time seeing how God's amazing creation, and then to just see the progression of man and just the walking with God and experiencing His glory. And what I was just kind of pondering is the voice that defined Adam and Eve. And then I was just asking myself the question, whose voice defines me? Like, who do I listen to? Whose smile do I want? Whose approval do I want? And it made me think about, we had Silas and Weston, our little ones, here this last week for about 4 days. And it made me think about how children are we are the voice that defines who our children are. You are a voice that defines who your kids are. And we were at the park, and we were at the zoo, and we were all over at Urban Air, jumping on tramps. And the one thing I kept thinking about as I was just meditating today on this is that kids are always looking for their parents in the crowd. Like, look at me, look at me. And so I can just tell you for 4 days, and moms, you know this well, Mama, 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 look at me. And I heard that. Nana, Nana, look at me. Watch me. Look at what I can do. And all through the week, or that 4 days, I got to hear, and I just love it because they're looking to us. Moms, as sometimes annoying as it can be, your kids are looking to you to define who they are. And I was just thinking about what it must have been like for heaven to kind of just invade earth in that moment at creation. And I just was just reflecting that Adam knew who he was because he looked at his father. And the destiny of who Adam would become, not that he's going to be God, but who he would become, he would see who he was and who he was to become by looking in the eyes of his father. And the same for Eve. And as we're raising our children, our kids are looking to us to be the voice that defines who they are. They're looking in our eyes to see the reflection about who they will become. And unfortunately, we don't get too far into the book where we see other voices that start to define Adam and Eve. And I was just pondering the fact that they had never heard another voice before. What was it like for the voice of the enemy, seducing them as he began to get them suspicious and to doubt that God really loved them, that God was who he said he was, that they were who God said that they were. And all of a sudden, this other voice enters into the garden. And it made me think about what other voices come in. The battle begins in the garden early. And for our kids, we know the battle begins very early in life. So we were at the park, and Silas and Weston were playing. And as Silas was climbing up this one thing to do something, this older girl, she was 7, said to him, "You're little, you can't do this." And everything in his countenance just changed. He's got great balance, and he was just doing some really great things. And the moment that she spoke that, it just it affected him in his spirit. And I was watching it all happen, and he walked over to me and he said, "Nana, am I little?" And I feel like right out of Genesis 3, the Father says, when they have sinned, Adam and Eve have sinned, and and they realize, there's shame, there's fear, there's blame, and they say, we're naked. And the Father says, "Who told you you were naked?" And I said to Silas, I go, "Who told you we're little? Like, you're not little. Look what you can do." And I had to remind him. And that was just a split second. How many voices try to influence, get into the ears of our children, get into the heads? What is the enemy saying? What does the culture say? What are these other voices that are trying to attach themselves and get our kids to agree with their voice? Because the only way that the enemy had any hold on Adam and Eve at all is because they listened and they agreed. So parents, what I love about this is the father comes running. It's just like Luke 15. And he is searching them out. And he comes running. Now, what did they do? Their first reaction is to hide in fear and in shame. Our kids, we know our kids will do that when they've done something wrong or they've sinned. And here we see the father comes running. And his voice is the one that he wants to define their life. So, Mom, I just want to encourage you. Let your voice be the voice that defines your children. And when they sin, when they make mistakes, when they fail, you run after them. Even in the place of hiding, call out and ask them the questions. Who told you you weren't smart? Who told you you were too small? Who told you you didn't know how to behave? Who told you? All of those voices that will try to define who they are. You be the voice that defines them. And in the process of raising our kids, we're leaning them into listen to the Father's voice to be the one that defines them. All right, have a blessed week. This is the Mom Minute for this week. Thanks for listening, y'all.